Hello, 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 party people. How are you on this Tuesday afternoon, almost afternoon? So, I'm going to share a message that was pulled this morning via Oracle cards, and it is very impromptu. I had come down and just held kind of my morning prayer space, and really felt nudged to pull cards for message to be shared. So I did. There were 3 different decks that I was nudged towards, and literally the cards either flew out or fell out of each deck. I choose cards differently depending on just how I feel, how I'm drawn, how I'm shown. And today I really didn't have to do any of that work. It was just all waiting there for me. So for us, I should say, definitely this is to be shared. It kind of goes hand in hand a bit with yesterday's message. And here's the other thing is that I wrote yesterday. I have things for each of the tiers, for the membership tiers in Patreon, the Eternal Elephant Journey Exploration tiers, and Spirit even overrode that and said, yes, all of that, but this today, this. So I am abiding. Here we go. So I'm going to just roll in. I love it when the cards fly out or when the cards fall out, and when they mirror one another, when they provide parallel message. And so that is basically what's transpired between 2 of the decks. And then we get some acknowledgement of some really good direction moving forward. So yesterday I spoke a lot about love, relationships, communication, and I didn't speak about the sensation of belonging. And I talked a little bit, not in depth, but just as kind of a moving variable for people, a little bit about family dynamic. But it wasn't the pinnacle focus, right? Today, that is the pinnacle focus. It is the same overlay of love and relationship and communication is our topic, kind of part of our topic. But then there's this sense of belonging, the seeking of belonging, the seeking of acceptance. And then there's this triangle. They give me the triangle. And in the triangle space, don't mind my fingernails. In the triangle space, like that, each of these edges, each of these sides hold one another up. Without the balance, without the components of each of these sides, we fall out of balance. So right now what they're showing me is they're giving me this triangle. They give me a triangle of ancestors, generations, family. The next side or edge would be your DNA or karmic DNA blueprint, and then the spring equinox, which represents a rebirth. The triangle of these cards come in the inverted position, so that's acknowledging that this is area of obstacle, challenge, struggle, and that is in relation to belonging. It is in relation to love, right? And it's also in relation to our current moment. We spoke about this big, huge emotional purge. A lot of the emotional purge being wound emotion that's coming up into our space of the now, wanting to be acknowledged, wanting to be heard, wanting to be loved free in this purge, so we can have this clearing. And we spoke a lot about end of cycle, beginning of cycle. That's kind of where they start us here today, is they're acknowledging that we have this end of cycle, we have this beginning of cycle, right? A lot of times the space in between these two bookends isn't acknowledged. We have this, and as humans we have this pull towards instant gratification as well. So our mind and our humanness wants us to be able to go, okay, this is the end, this is the beginning. But we have this space in between, and sometimes this transitionary space, again, I've spoke about being kind of like this void. And so there's many components and variable areas that affect and are influencing and are coming up relative to this purge space as we're coming up upon end of cycle. And in what I'm seeing this in my read space, I'm seeing this in my companion space, is that family dynamic is a very heavy and predominant space right now. Reason being is that it is from our family unit, a great deal from our family unit. Of course, there's, once again, many variables in this, but where we learn love, all aspects of love, where we learn nurture, where we learn identity, self-identity, where we learn belonging. So this is when I say where we learn these things, this is where and how we learn them in a human way, in the dynamic of the physical way. And within all of that is also beheld conditioning, cultural conditioning, programming relative to what's acceptable, what we've accepted in those practices, etc. So what we're really coming up with, things that are being exposed for us, some of our challenges and obstacles that people are really feeling, is relative to the roles, the expectations and compensations that we've learned in order to adhere to the roles, the expectation, to gain the acceptance, to stay in the sensation of belonging within the generational space, the cultural space, the DNA space, like that, right? So we're looking at this, or we're being asked. So our own spirit, right, has its own agenda. It has its own essence, its own perfection, its own divinity, and it's when in our human space here and in our experience, it can become very cultured or entangled, I will say, in cultured conditioning. So right now in this space, we're exploring, we're discovering, and we're also seeing there's a lot of mirror activity where the smoky mirror is being cleared, and we're seeing with genuinity and clarity in what ways these entanglements, in what ways these teachings, this being put in different roles, adhering to those expectations, are no longer serving us, are actually hindering the path of your true authentic spirit. Wants to be cleared, wants to clear that space. So we're looking at where are we adhering relative to like our identity and our definition. Where does that come from relative to the expectation of others? In what areas am I somebody else's idea and not really honoring either what I know to be authentic and true, or what I feel to be the right of the matter? In what ways then have I taken those areas that are authentic and true, but have either been taught to be burdensome or unacceptable? In what way, where are those compartments? What's in those compartments? What behaviors, what experiences made me think they belonged in compartments, right? So sometimes, again, the narcissistic relationship comes to mind, the narcissistic and the cultured codependent a participant. So if we are raised in a narcissistic by a narcissistic parent or guardian, it can be very difficult for us to understand healthy ways of receiving love. It becomes very conditioned, and we start to come up with compensations, adaptability. So we have our own adaptabilities, but we might have compensations like, look, I've done all of this. I've done this exactly how you have wanted. I am exactly how you want. So now I can receive the acceptance and the nourishment and the love. So when we're cultured in that way, then that becomes an entanglement. We become entangled in a farce. We can become entangled in this farce of what is genuine and what is true relative to love. What is unconditional love? What is conditional love? What within me am I seeing now as reactionary space? When we talk about conditional and unconditional love, you best believe that conditional love often has some sort of consequence, like in a narcissistic pattern, the narcissist doesn't like something or is not within that person's scope of control and controlling. The other person, I'm just going to call this the codependent individual, or the enabler or whatever, on the other side. And so oftentimes what happens is a withdrawal of affection and emotion, or emotional availability, or that fluidity of giving love. They take it away. And so we become fearful of, I don't have the acceptance, I don't have the belonging, it's in that, then of course the conditional love can also be about control, or generate circumstances of imbalance in that. And the other thing as well is that sometimes the scrutiny or the bullying or criticism, that just sometimes makes us feel like, or the fear of those things makes us feel like we just don't want to rock the boat. This is the way to keep things fluid, and so we kind of don't rock the boat. We kind of walk on those eggshells, and we learn what will and what won't provide us the acceptance or the nurturing that we're desiring. And so we adapt, we compensate. So all of that stuff is coming up for people. What is healthy, what is unhealthy, what is true, what is not true, relative to you, your genuine self, my genuine self. There's circumstances in which, nobody has to be deemed the bad guy. It just is about it just is about our true and authentic identity. So because we became entangled in something, we learned to receive acceptance in some certain way, and so we curtailed, and now we're trying to unravel that entanglement. That doesn't mean that there was malice attached to how we were conditioned at all. There can be, like in the evidence of the narcissistic companionship, there can be what feels very much like malice within that circumstance, but it's not always that way. Sometimes it just is. So whether there seems to be a quote unquote bad guy or not bad guy, we don't have to feel like we have to invalidate anybody else in order to validate ourselves, and vice versa. So and that really also I was getting nudged about like family reaction, their reaction. So let's say that okay, a cultured response. And oftentimes when we are going against the grain, or we're speaking out against a cultured response that is unhealthy and is upholding unhealthy practices and things that are harming people, such as there's like generational abuse situations, and the way that society often turns their head because it's so ugly, it's easier to do that, and then we have victim blaming that transpires. Hold on here, I'm just kind of losing my... So when we are speaking up against something like that, we can remember that that family's reaction is also a conditioned reaction. It does not need to invalidate us, what our truth is. So I guess I'm kind of choppy on this here. So I'm not trying to be choppy. I'm trying to piece it together so it feels as seamless as possible. So I guess what I'm trying to allude to is that, well, this is another area that's coming up, which Crow in February, March said that we would be coming up against, we would be asked to stand up against cultural barriers and programming that were not healthy, and that we are going to need to do so regardless of the reaction of family, friends, those close to us, and not allowing us to validate or invalidate one another, holding kind of the opposites in that way. And okay, so I'm going to come back to Crow and all that, but I feel like I had to toss that in there. So in the sensation of belonging, then, because we're having to, when we're speaking out against things that are not healthy for ourselves or the dynamic of others within either community or family, etc., like something like turning heads against abuse or trauma, that makes us sometimes feel like our sensation of acceptance and belonging is being alienated, or we're being ostracized. And in this, we're being asked to learn to find that security within. So this is when the ego gets brought up. And the ego, so you know how I said there doesn't have to be a good guy, there doesn't have to be a bad guy, but there can be those negative or positive elements that make things healthy or unhealthy. And so the ego, it does have the capacity to just eat away at all that is good in a person, in all that it can snuff the decency out of a person when the ego is so enlarged, in control, wanting control. So like I said, it doesn't have to be the ego. Like anything else, is neither good nor bad. However, it's a very, very necessary part of this human existence, and it can manifest inclinations of positive, negative, healthy, unhealthy. The ego, relative to the sensation of belonging, it seeks to solve the predicament of what we perceive as separation. And we're being reminded that the ego has... Sorry, tiny hiccup, I was interrupted. We're being reminded that the ego has no conscious memory of connection, the interconnection, that we are connected to others innately. We are innately and divinely connected to others, to our natural world, to all living things, and mostly source, creator, the universe. And so oftentimes we sometimes experience this sensation of needing to get out of seclusion and bond with people, be validated by people, be accepted by people, in order to feel like we need to establish this sensation of belonging. And interestingly, as all of these things are coming up, as we are a bit more secluded right now, and have been since even the moment that I said that Crow had come in talking about sacred law, you know, this, and Hawk has shown up again, relative to getting really good at being okay with being alone, the understanding the belonging and the connectivity, and who we want within our space to provide us sensations of belonging. And so what's interesting is that we're taken away, we are being secluded a bit, and what it's doing is giving us this space of who am I without the attachments to everybody else? Who am I without anybody else whispering in my ear? Who am I without all the societal role modeling? Where's my identity and all of that? And we're starting to see things that we're aligned with and that we're not aligned with. And so there's some shit shaken out, and some of it's really, it's fucking uncomfortable. Some of it's really fucking painful. And which is where the nurturing card, you know, and encouragement comes from. There's many positive aspects of belonging. It allows us to develop, it allows us to express our abilities to love, to connect to one another, to compromise when it's time, to bond, to share, to care. And it is absolutely 100% true that we see ourselves much more clearly through the mirror of relationship. However, it is important, relative to belonging, that we are not seeking approval through others via the connection of belonging. And boy, this is hard. This is hard. It's but it's healthy and it's fulfilling. And we're in this moment of understanding these things are coming up, so that again, like I said yesterday, we can purge, we can feel that sensation of light within ourselves, authenticity, feeling closer to fine. So Spirit has helped us. They've kind of nudged us in this space, and they are around. Your helpers, call in your helpers. They love to help us. Sometimes they have to be helped or asked, because they can't compromise the integrity of our own free will. And so they will help us focus on positive feelings relative to belonging or being part of a community, helping us understand trust, our areas where we may need to work on trust, trusting ourselves to make decisions, to be able to trust in connections, also asking for help, understanding how to be self-reliant, but also to rely on others. So nurturing really is encouraging us to focus on creating just a calm, balanced life for ourselves, which is, balance is a funny word to me, because I feel like the only time I know that I need to balance is when I'm out of balance. and grab back onto the pendulum and swing the other way. But relative to nurturing, being balanced, nurturing, and focusing on compassion, focusing on real or things that are very realistic, practical, down to earth attitude when collaborating with others, especially in our present state. They're encouraging us again. I know you're probably like, are you kidding me? But slowing down, biding your time, biding your resources. That's your energy, your own energy. So being mindful, really nurturing the breath, and but being so mindful and aware, so that you're really being careful about your being resourceful and utilizing the practical mind, so that if issues arise, then we can make much more practical, lean solutions with ease, minimal drama. They urge us to be very careful about giving too much without regard for our own needs. So if you are experiencing fatigue, exhaustion, illness, general malaise, and you know darn well that you are doing so much for others and you're not doing for yourself at this time, take the time for yourself. Slow down. Do not seek empowerment by doing for others based out of a need for acknowledgement. Rather, step back into the still, the compassion for yourself, and empower yourself by nurturing yourself. And then from a healthy and rejuvenated place, you can step back in and help others. They bring us to the heart space, really nurturing and creating this heart space, remembering that this is our space of divine love, of unconditional love. They ask us to flood ourselves with this. Flood ourselves. This is allowing us to remember, to recall, to activate, to ignite soul purpose, authentic being, genuine essence. Brings us into alignment. Let's see. So yes, really nurturing that heart space, and knowing that when we're doing that work, I said yesterday, doing your own work is doing work for the collaborative. Allowing this to be voluminous and blanket you and beam from you for yourself, that's extending. You're bringing that out into this world as well. Let's see if there's, I kind of have time constraints because I'm the mama teacher and the Bima teacher, Bima grandma. Okay, so they gave me some guidance in this as well. They talked about activations. They've talked about movement. So I'm going to try to move through this real quick because my grandson has a class soon. Lean into Mama Earth. Get real good and grounded and rooted. Work with her to release and receive. Same with your Grandma Moon. Really the divine mother, the divine feminine. Allowing yourself to be nurtured and bathed in all things that Mother Mary, Parvati, utilizing the Ho'oponopono for yourself, and also in spaces with others of conflict, in areas where there's a tug of war of validating, being not validated, accepting, not being accepted, belonging, not belonging. Use the Ho'oponopono in all of their spaces. Encourage the deer into your space. The deer showed up this morning, representing unconditional love, our ability to move through any obstacle, especially fear thresholds, with that deer medicine and energy of unconditional love. It's the divinity of it. They offered the sun salutation, raising yourself, your head to the east, to the lights, just like the sunflower. They said, get moving, shake your ass. Melissa, get moving, shake your ass. that stimulates the purging, the shaking up, the moving of the energy, good flow when we're going through things like this. Let's see. They reminded me about Crow. They reminded me about sacred law. They reminded me that Crow lives in the void. Crow is aware of past, present, future simultaneously. They're pushing us beyond our confines of cultural conditioning. They're pushing us beyond anything that is shaming us from moving beyond things that are not healthy with us in cultural conditioning. And they're saying that when we heal in this space, we also are healing past, present, and future simultaneously in this moment for us, for our ancestors, for generational stuff, for karmic shit, for our babies in the future, all at the same time. And then they gave me the number 13. 13 brings the test, it brings the challenge, brings the obstacle, brings the struggle. Sometimes it brings suffering, but it is about the end of the cycle, the beginning of the cycle, the death, the rebirth. The 13 represents death of one's self, the world of matter, the conditioned physical self, and the birth of our spirit, our authentic, genuine, divine self. What's happening now is a passage, so we can go into a different kind of form of baptism of self and initiation, the higher level of existence. The duality, it brings us balance, light, shadow, reverent, irreverent. And I was very much reminded, and I hope my sister's not upset that I use this, but she was reminded, she told me a teaching from an elder of hers, and the elder said when you're in a positive space, when you're in a, and you're feeling the negative impeding, to say whoopada, like celebrate, thanks to those who are bringing that, or to the circumstance bringing that, because it brings us balance, and we need the duality for balance. Hold the candle. There's always light at the end of the tunnel. Keep your head up. This is about activation. This is about movement and purge. And okay, that's what I got. Sorry, I'm all but I got 8 minutes, Jack. And we're going to kindergarten Phi Ed. All right, I love you all. Peace out. Have a good afternoon.